In this brief demo, I'm going to show you how to do client-side TCP/IP configuration in 3 common client operating systems. This is Windows 8.1, and I'm going to right-click the Start Screen button. This is a shortcut way to get to this really neat little flyout. I'm going to go to Run, and in the Run box, I'm going to type ncpa.cpl. That's a really good shortcut for you to know because it takes you directly to your network connections folder. I'm going to right-click this guy and go to Properties. Notice that this is something that you have to be an administrator on that machine to do. And notice that we have entries for both TCP/IP v4 and v6. I'm going to double left click v4 and you'll notice that I'm set as a DHCP client. So I'm going to obtain my IP information from a DHCP server. Now let me open up a PowerShell console and I'm going to type ipconfig. Notice that this machine does have a Class C style IP address. My default gateway is 7.1. And notice that my network card has given a link local FE80 address as well. Now, let me CLS to clear the screen. ipconfig all is what you want to use if you want all information. And in particular, I want to draw your attention to the physical address, which shows the MAC address. And I also want you to see we have DHCP information here. Our DHCP server is also 7100. And we have details about the lease, when we obtained this lease and when we're going to lose it. Now we'll go to Ubuntu Desktop Linux. There's a few different ways to get to your network settings. In Ubuntu, there's this little widget up here, and you can come down to Edit Connections, and you'll see that I have 2 network interfaces, one called internal and one called external. I'll select mine and say Edit. Again, it gives us the MAC address, the hardware address. Linux historically gives you a lot more control over your settings, so notice that you can actually spoof a MAC address very, very easily there. If we go to IPv4 settings, you'll see that this is an example of a manually assigned IP address where I plugged in using add here 6.9 with a 24-bit mask and the appropriate gateway address. And let's close out of here and bring up a terminal. As far as diagnostics go, ping. If you get responses on localhost or 127.0.0.1, that's a good thing. If you know the IP address of your target, like my local router interface, which I believe is 6.1, you'd want to try that next. You want to get responses. Let me clear the screen. And I'm actually plugged into a DNS server here, so I can specify a host name. And now I can successfully ping a host that's on a remote subnet. So I'm going through my router here to connect to my DC1, which is a Windows machine. And finally, here we are on Apple's OS X operating system. There are various ways to get to our network preferences. I'm going to open the Apple menu and come down to System Preferences and then into the network item. I'm going to focus on my wired Ethernet connection here, and we can just see here very quickly that I am using DHCP, although you can override that if you want to, and verify our IP address, our subnet mask, our default gateway, our DNS. It's not giving us the MAC address though, is it? So let's go to Advanced and see maybe on the hardware page. Sure enough, there it is right here. Cool. So the take-home message I have for you here and showing you the client-side settings is that it's the same standard vocabulary. Once you understand IP addresses and subnet masks and default gateways and so on, and DHCP of course, then you should be able to confidently troubleshoot regardless of what operating system you're dealing with.